really reaching out and not always being on social media, really connecting with other humans is so important. I think we have forgotten how just grabbing a cup of coffee, it can be 5 minutes, but having an interaction with another human is so important. So really, and even if it's just a phone call, if you don't have that person, reaching out and saying, hey, having one of those days. And so making sure that you do have a person that you can reach out, and having that person kind of on call, like saying, hey, having a hard week, are you going to be around this week?
Welcome to Normalize the Conversation by Inspiring My Generation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicheder. Today, I'm joined by Cassie Blakely, founder of Warrior Parent Consulting, parent advocate, and someone who's navigated her own journey with ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia, and parenting children on unique learning paths. In our conversation, we dive into the power of curiosity without judgment, how to navigate shame and self-criticism, and why human connection, even something as simple as a hello or a hug, can make all the difference. We also talk about creating space for all of your emotions to coexist, staying compassionate toward yourself, and practical ways parents can feel empowered while supporting their children. Join us, and by the end of this episode, you might just see yourself, your emotions, and your connections in a completely new way. Cassie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I want to check in. How are you really?
I'm doing well. Today, I always like to check in at the moment. And today I've had my gratitude and I've done my angel prayers. So I am feeling very hopeful and positive. And when things come arise, I know where my toolbox is to handle them.
Oh, I love that. Having that toolbox to be able to handle things when they arise is so important. And for me, that's something I really struggled with for so long, was not knowing what to do. And things always came up again. And I kept telling myself over and over again over the years, like, oh, I'm going to get past this and then that'll be it. And then it'll be fine. And like, that wasn't the reality. Things were going to come back up. I was going to feel sad again or frustrated or angry or overwhelmed or whatever it was. The emotions that were fun to feel and the emotions that weren't as fun to feel, it was a cycle. They were going to come back up again. And if I didn't have the tools, I didn't have a toolbox to pull from, it felt very overwhelming when they came up because I felt kind of stuck and paralyzed in it. It's still something that I struggle with, building that toolbox and figuring out what tools to use. But I love that you started with that, right? Like, I have this toolbox and I know what to pull from.
Many years, that's the beautiful part about aging is the wisdom that comes with it, and that our toolbox change. They change during time periods of our lives and depending on where we are and what we need. So the flexibility, I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is information. I seek information myself, and I want to share that with other people. So you can have as much information as you want, and what feels right to you. Try different things and don't get frustrated, because I know I certainly have all the tools and I still have to try different things depending on, what I'm doing and where I'm at in that day. It can be, I know my regulation changes throughout the day. So knowing that. So it's really important. So I am an information seeker. I'm curious, and I just love to pass that on to so many, because I'm also on this journey with so many other people. And I also have kiddos that have been on this journey. So it's been my greatest gift.
I love that. Being curious is the most important part, is what I've learned. Because when, like you said, it's what works for you in that moment right now. And I found so many times something that worked for me last depressive episode or last time I felt anxious or overwhelmed didn't necessarily work this time or in this moment. And that's okay. And it didn't mean that I was broken or that something was wrong with me or that I wasn't going to be able to get through it. And it took a very, very, very long time to get like to that point where I could accept it was okay if something that worked one time didn't work this next time. And it was okay to keep trying to figure out what was right for me in this moment and that it was a process. And the only thing that I could do was stay curious to make it through.
I really learned at Hoffman because I went to Hoffman, curious without judgment. Really continuing to be curious, but without the judgment is the hardest part, right? Because we do get attached to an outcome. And we think if it happens once and this worked, then it should work every time. And it just doesn't happen that way because we are humans. And I like to call it we're on the human roller coaster experience. And we are, riding a wave. And sometimes we're on the top and it feels so good. And sometimes we're at the bottom and we're rolling and we don't know how to get back up. And so I think, continuously looking at it from a lens of being curious, but the main thing is without judgment for yourself.
That, okay, that sounds really hard.
It is.
Oh,
It's a practice. It's a practice like we all of our things. And again, without judgment, because sometimes you're gonna be like, I did it. I've got this. I'm being curious and I'm exploring. And then other times you're in complete judgment. And I think awareness is the most important part. And that's why I love information, because if you are aware and you have the information, then you can choose what's right for you and would do what's right for you, which might be different for someone else.
how did you get to that place where you're able to do, yeah, do it without the judgment? Because right away, I know. So, for example, right now, I've recently, as you know, entered into this more depressive episode. And by the way, I want to say for those listening, you've been one of the kindest people to me during this. The way you've like checked in and just been so kind for someone who knows me online, right? To sit there and check in, send messages, just kindness has been so incredible. I so appreciate that. Just want to say that 'cause not a lot of people make the effort to really just check in and to be so kind. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm taking that in. I'm learning to take in beautiful comments because I think, especially as females, sometimes we just brush things off and like, oh, no problem. But really taking in those moments, that's part of it. And so I appreciate you acknowledging, that because I am a very empathetic person. And there's beautiful parts of that, and there's hard parts of that walking around the world with an open heart. And I now know and am learning and continuously learning on boundaries on what that looks like, what's right for me. And as a child, I didn't have those skills and I was a pleaser. And so I was just out and about pleasing everyone and really not pleasing myself. And so with age and lots of therapy and lots of retreats and Hoffman experience, I've really learned how to protect myself and what's right for me and to not feel guilty about that.
So it's so hard. I know
It's hard.
for me in this like episode, the voice in my head has been so much judgment. And there's been so many nights where I've just sat there like up in tears, like 2 a.m. Like, what's wrong with you? Why are we back here? Like, we can't keep coming back here. Like, you're never going to get through this. You are not good enough. No one likes you. Like, you don't matter. Like, you can't, like, it's just that negative, intrusive thought over and over again in this really, really harsh, critical voice. And it feels really isolating. And when your brain is telling you that you're all alone, that no one likes you, that you don't like you, and you don't feel like you can reach out to anyone, you believe your brain because like you don't believe yourself, like,
It's
that's what you,
powerful. It's
it's
very,
powerful. It's a very loud voice, and it's the only voice really around you when you're alone. Scary.
mhm.
And the one really kind voice that I did have consistently was your voice in my DM. So I appreciate that very, very much. Thank you. Was one voice that really helped counter a lot of that judgmental voice. But for someone who, like me, who has that as the main voice and feels like you can't reach out, you don't know what to do, how can you begin to be curious without judgment? Maybe silence that voice a little bit.
Right. I find, well, first of all, always, trying to get professional help and seeking therapy is really, number one if you're able to do that, is really extremely helpful. Second is I love when I'm inside and isolated, just getting out in nature, doing that walk, seeing other humans, just even if I'm, by myself walking, I think I instantly take off my shoes. I went to the meditation gardens in Encinitas, and I live 5 minutes from it. I think I've been one other time. And I can't believe that it was so close, and I didn't even realize how important it was for me. I was in, I was frustrated. I was having one of those days, and I just went and walked around. Instantly, I felt a little lift, and I took my shoes off and I just put my feet, and other people were doing it too, and I put my feet in the ground. Even if you don't have a meditation garden, I do that in my backyard. You can do it anywhere. I instantly feel more grounded within the earth when I do that. I think there's something out in nature that is so healing and that people don't talk enough about, that can be an instant like moment for yourself. And reaching out, I think the hardest part is thinking like no one else is feeling this way and I'm the only one. And I know I felt that way. I know I continue and will continue to feel those and have those moments and those days. I know everyone I talk to has those moments. And so, really reaching out and not always being on social media, really connecting with other humans is so important. I think we have forgotten how just grabbing a cup of coffee, grabbing it can be 5 minutes, but having an interaction with another human is so important. So really, and even if it's just a phone call, if you don't have that person, reaching out and saying, hey, having one of those days. Um, and so making sure that you do have a person that you can reach out and having that person kind of on call, like saying, hey, having a hard week. Are you going to be around this week? Um, I'm such a routine person. I really rely because of my ADHD brain. I rely on routine. So I don't have to think about a lot of things. And I think it's important for us to be able to talk to other people that we feel really safe with, that know where our stuff shows up. So it just takes one person to do that. And I love being that person for a lot of people. And then I have people that do it for me. And I hope that we continue to talk about this so we can keep being there for each other. It's just it's everything. Human connection is everything.
It really is. It makes such a difference. First of all, going back to you said about therapy, that was one of the big thing, right? You right away, you're like, do you have a therapist? You shared like a possible therapist for me that I did connect with and actually started seeing a therapist. Like that's something that you actually helped me with right away. Human connection, another huge thing. Actually talking to people, being around people. It's so easy to convince yourself that you really are all alone when you are all alone. And
Yeah.
that's a big thing for me. On Mondays, I go into a facility and I was talking with these patients, and we're talking about how, your brain convinces you of all these things. And what's one thing you can do to prove your brain wrong? And one person said, like, well, I'm all alone. I was like, well, how can you prove to your brain that you're not alone? And he's like, well, I can't because I am. And I was like, well, what if you talk to someone today? And then for that one conversation, you're not alone. And then you can prove to your brain that you were not alone. And he's like, well, I didn't think about it like that. Like, how can we find small ways to just prove to our brain, even for like 1 microsecond, that it's wrong? And I mean, I preach it and then I'm terrible at doing it. So don't get me wrong. Great. I should work on that. But it's so, if we can just find small ways to improve that connection, it really does make a difference. For me, yesterday was one of the first times I was actually around someone again, right? And just having a hug makes such a difference for me. And it's so funny because I'm usually a person who's like, I don't like hugs. I'm like, not a physical touch. At the minute I go like a week without a hug, I'm like, the world is ending. I just need like that feeling of someone around me, just a hug or a conversation, a phone call, like you said, that feeling of someone being there, not physically being alone, really just makes such a difference.
It does. It really does. And I think I keep coming back to Hoffman, but it taught me so much about also acknowledging where we are. Maybe you are alone. Maybe that is the case, and acknowledging that and not running away. I find that for so many years I ran away. I did not want to feel sadness and mad. That was not an emotion that was accepted where I grew up or in my home. And so acknowledging those feelings, sometimes they pass much faster than just denying them, of saying, I am alone. You're right. And what do I do with that? That makes me feel really sad. And sitting in that sadness for a little while and letting it pass, and then being there for yourself and saying, but you know what? I'm not alone. I have myself. I am the biggest, strongest person. I know how to support myself better than anyone else. No one else is living in my heart and my brain. So how do I do that? And I think really knowing that. So for me, sitting in the sadness or the anger, it usually passes much faster when I do that, when just going, okay, no, I'm not gonna, I shouldn't feel sad. I shouldn't feel mad. Here are my gratitude, and I do a gratitude and appreciation every day. But I think you can do that, and you can also feel sad and angry too. And I don't think our society here accepts or wants people to feel that. And people are uncomfortable with those big feelings. And I think us acknowledging, hey, I'm feeling sad today. Tell me more about that. What does that look like? For me, journaling has saved my life. And that was before, therapy, or before I went to therapy. I have hundreds of books. I started in fourth grade. And I think that again, for yourself, you might not even need another person. It just writing those feelings down and acknowledging them yourself is so powerful.
Wait, I love that because we can let these feelings coexist, right? We're taught to resist. We're taught to resist, at least for me, and it sounds like for you, right? We're taught to resist the sadness, the anger, the frustration, the overwhelm, right? Allow it to coexist with the gratitude and the happiness and the joy. Like you can feel both. And for so long, I know for me, it was like, well, you shouldn't feel sad. You should be grateful that you have this, right? Like you shouldn't be mad that this happened. You should be grateful because look at all these things you have, right? It's like, yes, I have these things and I'm very grateful for that. I am also mad and frustrated about this. And because I was taught I wasn't allowed to have that anger and that frustration, and I had to stuff all that inside, it built up. I suppressed it, it built up, and then suicide attempts, psych unit, here we are. But if we just had the space to acknowledge that they can coexist.
They really can. And you can still have joyful moments in
Yes.
all of those.
Yeah.
Even in a depressive moment, there might be 1 second where you see something or you feel something, and it can be joyful. And we have to remember that we can have them all together. We can acknowledge all of them, especially as women, and how important it is to be able to express ourselves and not be attached to the judgment of other people on, oh, wow, well, she's really an angry woman. Yeah, I am. And that's okay.
I love that. When I first came out of the psych unit, everyone was saying, like, do a gratitude journal, do a gratitude journal. And I kept trying to do this thing where I was focusing only on things that I was grateful for. But I was so deeply sad and depressed and did not want to be alive. Everyone's like, but you have all these things to be grateful for. How could you not want to be alive? And I was like, I couldn't comprehend why I was feeling like I didn't want to be alive when I had all these good things that everyone could only see one side and I could only see the other side. And it wasn't making sense. So at some point, I switched it to a happiness jar with sticky notes, right? And I'd write down things that made me smile during the day.
Mm.
right? So that way both things could exist, right? It was like, I have these things that are really good. I also have these moments where the depression exists. I can't erase that. I can't make that just go away because I want it to. I would love it to go away, and I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to do take my medication. I am going to do the coping skills, the self-care practices. I'm going to show up for myself. Absolutely. But I can't just like snap my fingers and say, I'm grateful it no longer exists. But if I can find things during the day that make me smile and I can focus in on those and make those a big part of my day as well and highlight those, that's great. So when I was able to change that language, it made such a difference. But when everyone kept trying to make it that it had to be one or the other, I could not. It almost made it worse because I could not comprehend it. They couldn't comprehend it. And then we're sitting there like not understanding each other. And it felt even more isolating for me. And I felt shame. I felt so much shame for feeling the way I felt when both could just exist.
That's right. And shame is such a huge part of this. And that's why I think I'm so open about my own struggles. I think I'm open about my experiences as a child, what it looks like. That's why I'm such an informational seeker because I just want more for myself. I want always to have those tools. But there was so much shame in like my learning difference and my ADHD and all of these things that were going on in my head, but I was still smiling. So no one knew that those were existing. Because they're like, oh, she's a happy, sweet little girl. And I was. And I felt sad. I felt I was hidden. I felt something was wrong with me. And I think that's why I not only talk about it openly, because I think we find such deep connection when we are open and vulnerable about our own parts of ourselves, because that's not just all of us, it's one part of ourselves. And there's many, many parts of us. And there's parts that we struggle with, and there's parts that just are easy for us and that just are. So I love, I talk to my girls and many parents and young adults about parts because I think it's so important that this pattern that we have is not all of us. So shame doesn't come in that.
Because shame is, so many of us feel like we have to hide who we are, right? Shame teaches us that we're wrong, that we're not good enough, that we're bad, that it's just, it teaches us to not like a piece of who we are. And it's so frustrating because what if we just had conversations earlier, right?
I
What
know.
if we just normalized emotions, normalized mental health, normalized learning differently, normalized existing differently, just different aspects of who we are. If we could just have conversations, if we could just say, how are you? If we could just check in, any of it. Instead, we made everything like a secret, turned
Yeah.
it into shame, and then wonder why people struggle in silence.
And this will be my goal until my last breath. I will speak. I always say I'm from the Midwest. We talk sports, news, and weather. My dad and I laugh about that. And but I don't. Whenever I go, whenever I meet someone within like 10 minutes, either we're talking ADHD, we're talking mental health, we're talking dyslexia. I feel like I put that energy out in the world, like I'm ready. And I'm also open. I'm looking around. I'm not on my phone all the time. I mean, we are in a society where that is part of it, but I am also trying to make sure that when I'm walking around in the world, I'm looking at people's faces even if it's just a hello, to see, because I think we've really missed that part of it. And it's so important again to have that connection, even if it's just a hello for the day.
Yes, I know. Do you want to hear something that just, oh my goodness, I was at CVS the other day and there was someone in line in front of me and I just said like, hey, how are you? And I looked at them and made eye contact. And the person started crying because no one's made eye contact with them when saying, how are you before? And I
Mhm.
was like, I could not believe that. Because for me, that's so just natural. Like I say, how are you with intention? Because I mean, that's the podcast, that's the brand. Like, that's just what I do. That's so ingrained in who I am. I never thought about not saying how are you without looking at someone, expecting them to answer and having a conversation. For me, it's no longer a greeting. I guess maybe it probably was 5 years ago before it became part of the podcast. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was a greeting to me before. Not anymore. Now it's a conversation starter. But the person was crying because it was never meant to be a conversation with them before. And we had an actual conversation. And imagine how many people just don't feel heard. And if we just stopped and made eye contact and said hello, said, how are you? And meant it, how many people would feel seen, feel heard, feel like people cared? It makes such a difference. And all it takes is literally 30 seconds eye contact to change someone's life.
It doesn't take, when people are like, well, you need money to volunteer, no, you don't. You need to look someone in the eyes. And I love that you are doing that because I think so many of the younger generation have their heads down in the phone. I understand this is, but also we need to make sure that our head is up and we are looking into a room of people and that we're reading a room, that we're looking at social cues and knowing how to read those. Those are so important for the social aspect, especially for these kids that are growing up. And I love that more and more schools are now saying, hey, put the phones away. That's now, I mean, I think it's so important because it is a skill that a lot of times has to be learned and taught. It doesn't always come naturally.
Yeah. And it's so hard because kids are growing up now, right? With the phones all the time. So not only is it a skill that we often have, but when you're taught at 2 years old now, right, you're given a screen, an iPad to be kind of entertained at the dinner table so you're not screaming in a restaurant. Um, it's hard to know how to make eye contact and engage in a conversation. A lot of kids were also raised at a time, going to school at a time where they had to wear face masks. So they don't even read facial language as well anymore, right? It's just that was the time when a critical time in their lives. So it's so important that we begin to create these conversations. We start learning how we can just make a moment to have eye contact, to talk to people, to really sit face to face and get off the screens if we can. I actually started this thing with one of my friends, and I probably am annoying her so much with it. But she loves to send voice memos. And I was like, love it. However, I'm not going to answer voice memo. It has to be at least a video. I want to see your face. So like you can send me your voice if you don't want to like pick up the phone and call me, fine. It's gonna take the same amount of time to do the voice memo as it is a video. Still have to see your face though, right? So,
I love that. It's
right?
so,
I think it's more fun.
yeah,
More fun for me at least, entertaining.
it
So
is. It really is. And having this, just seeing you on the screen, the interaction, I mean, you'll definitely be on my gratitude list today. Number one.
same on my happiness, so sticky note. That it makes such a difference. For me, it makes a difference to just see someone's eyes. It really like seeing someone's eyes lights up my eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It might be a thing. It's probably a thing. I think it's a thing,
I
but it
think
makes,
it's and I think it's like sometimes with people, you know how you just feel so the communication and the talking feels so easy. Sometimes I say with some of my friends, I'm like, wow, it's like a soul to soul connection. Maybe we haven't even known each other very long, but I feel like my soul is connected with their soul. And I love when that happens and I say it and I'm like, oh, I think we have a soul. And no matter what age, there might be an age gap. I'm like, wow, I think we have a soul connection, which just lights, it feels like almost like this little buzz in my heart of like, I've known you before. I feel like, and it's hard to describe in words, but I just call it the soul to soul connection.
I love that. It, there's just something so special about those connections. And it really makes a difference for your mental health. It makes a difference. It makes you feel less alone.
Absolutely. And we have to, the hard part now is that we really have to make an effort to do it. It's not natural where, back in, when I was growing up, everyone was outside on their porches and every kid was riding their bikes and getting to know their neighbors. I also grew up in the Midwest where, it was just common to know every single person on your block. It's just, have lived in California for many years, and that's just not always the case here in a lot of these neighborhoods. And I think we really have to make an effort. And sometimes that feels uncomfortable and it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm putting myself out there. So there's a lot of feelings and emotions that come along with that. But always when I've done that and I've put myself out there, I usually find one connection that I am like, wow, so happy I did that. I felt very vulnerable doing that. And I'm 50 feeling that way. So I can't imagine when you're younger and you've grown up on a phone where it's not in that, but really making the effort. And that means looking in your local community paper, looking in the local magazine, looking on Nextdoor, the app. It really means making an effort to find where your community will be.
Yeah. And getting out of your head at the same time. That's a big thing for me. One thing you had said to me seems like find community groups, right? Finding people you can go and meet. And I get in my head all the time. And every time I go to do that, I'm like, I'm awkward. I'm not like a lot of people my age. I'm not going to be able to find anyone to get along with. I need to have a friend to go with so that I can make friends. I need like a wing woman to like help me make friends, right? Like I get all in my head. So being able to identify those intrusive thoughts, right? Curiosity without judgment, being able to just put myself out there with compassion, I guess might be the word, and
And
to show
yeah.
up and see what happens. Give myself compassion, grace, myself out there, and what's meant to be will be, I guess.
Right. And knowing that you're giving other people a lot of compassion, I know, and kindness, but really the first person that needs that is you. So making sure when you are in that loop, hold on here, who am I not giving compassion and kindness? Usually it's yourself. So, and why is that? I always think, like, where did that start? Did that start from childhood? Where did that pattern start? And kind of going back to that younger self and saying, and no one can give you love and care like your own self, you. In the afternoons, I pretty much like put my tappers on. I get myself regulated and I tell my younger self, who I usually 7 shows up for me when I'm 7. I felt like that's when a lot of patterns showed up for me. I go and visualize myself as 7 and I give myself, my older self now, a big hug to that 7-year-old and say, you are so loved and cared for. You are doing a great job. There is nothing like having your older self give your younger self the love that you needed that maybe you didn't get.
That I have like tears in my eyes. I
That's
mean,
therapy. I wish I could claim that, but that is just good therapy. And now I know how to do it for myself. And so that's why I say you we can give ourselves the love that we so deserved and needed. And maybe our needs weren't met when we were younger, but we certainly can give them now. And there's nothing better than ourselves, our older selves, giving, or maybe you have someone that was that person for you and they can go and you can visualize it and meditate that person giving you the love. There's just so many tools, and that's what I talk about a lot to parents, young adults. If we have the tools, we can just do better for ourselves. But again, there is no perfection. There is no, there is no way that always works, but just always being curious, and the judgment pattern is strong for ourselves. It's not for other people as much. It's strong for ourselves. So really allowing that, knowing that judgment pattern is there and saying, I acknowledge you, but you're not going to take over today. We're going to put you to the side and we're going to go to that social network. And you know what? If I meet someone, great. If I don't, good for me. I'm being brave, and that takes a lot.
Yeah. That judgment for ourselves is a lot stronger than for others.
It is.
It's, I'm like thinking about it, so much compassion and kindness for others. First ones be like, wow, they showed up, they tried, they put themselves out there, like, go introduce myself, see what support they need. How can I support them? How can I connect them? Myself, I will give a million reasons why I'm doing every single thing wrong. And if we can start to look at ourselves with the same compassion that we look at the lens that we look at others.
I just say, what would I tell a friend if they came to me with this situation, problem, feeling? What would I say? And if I'm not saying that to myself, because I know I'm so empathetic to other people, and if I'm not saying that to myself, then I need to change how I'm saying that. Because if I'm being judgmental, because I know when my friends come to me, I'm like, wow, that sounds really hard. How can I be helpful? What can I do? Um, I want to acknowledge you for where you're at. And now, not always, but I'm better at doing that for myself. And I've noticed that I now can get out of the negative self loop for my ADHD brain that really goes, that no one knew about when I was growing up, that I know now where my ADHD shows up. It's in that negative self loop. And so if I can help myself, I know, wow, I can help others too. And that's why I'm in, doing what I'm doing, because I know that I'm helping others, but I'm also helping my younger self that so needed someone like me to help and support.
Amazing. I, if you could go back in time to younger you, what would you say?
Oh, I would say you are enough just the way you are. Your life is going to show up in so many ways, and it's going to be hard. I mean, I've had near-death experience, I've had surgeries, I've had so many things show up at a young age. At the end, you will have the support and love you need from many people, but mostly from yourself. That's what I would say.
Love that. That's really powerful
Thank you.
from
I
yourself.
love having these conversations. I'm so impressed with how vulnerable you are and how much you share because it helps so many people not feel alone. And if I had to pick one thing that I think is the most important thing, it's sharing information so others don't feel alone. And you're so brave in that.
Thank you. On that note, how can tell everyone more about you and how they can connect with you, learn more about you, work with you?
Yeah, I consult families, parents, young adults. They hire me. They can look on social media, on Instagram. Just started TikTok, which is so funny at 50 to just put myself out there. And Cassie Blakely 17 is my handle. I have Warrior Parenting Consulting is my consulting. I consider myself a warrior. I've been through a lot. And I love to share all the experiences that I've had. I have a child development degree. I love helping. I love using Western and Eastern medicine and not pitting them against each other and using both together. I do a lot of parenting types of, helping kids find their superpowers. Maybe they have extra layers, but how can we find that superpower? What school looks like, how you can help with the mental health part of dyslexia, ADHD, autism, all of that. So you can look me up. I love supporting families. I'm giving a lot of information on my Instagram on what uh, ADHD, what it has meant to me, and dyslexia and anxiety, and giving lots of tips.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website, inspiringmygeneration.org, to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.